Police Facebook page drawing criticism for, oh, God forbid, shaming suspects. Yes, it seems that a driver mows down 6 mailboxes, slurs her words, and tells police that she has a lizard in her bra. Throw in a wisecracking police officer, and what do you get? A flippant post on Facebook along with the photos of the woman and, of course, her lizard. Well, you can't make this stuff up. Fox News contributor, law enforcement specialist who heads up the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University in beautiful downtown Fort Worth. Dr. Alex Del Carmen on the line here with us this morning. Dr. Del Carmen, how are you?
Good. How are you?
All right, sir. So what's the story here? The police are getting in trouble because they are making fun of bad guys and gals?
So I think the controversy lies on the fact that some police departments are posting the mugshots and some related information about people that they end up arresting on their Facebook page and other social media outlets. And so as a result of that, there's a claim that some civil rights folks are making that, in fact, this leads to public shaming and folks are not able to get a job after, they've been arrested, even though their conviction is still pending at that point.
Mm-hmm. So who's coming forward? Are we hearing from the American Communist Law, the ACLU here?
Well, not the ACLU, but I believe there are two local groups that are, simply making noise about the fact that, individuals are looking at their mugshots on their local papers and Facebook and whatnot, and as a result of that, there's a lot of, harassment and public shaming and emails that are coming into these folks, websites that, in fact, lead them to move town and perhaps not get a job or be fired from their jobs and whatnot. So.
Fox News contributor, law enforcement specialist at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth, Dr. Alex Del Carmen, and with us this morning. Dr. Del Carmen, is there some sort of problem as far as posting this? Is there a law or anything that they're violating as far as putting this up on Facebook pages?
Yeah, so police departments are actually within their legal right to do that. The information that is posted on the website is actually public information, and so there's no legal issue per se. What perhaps may arise as a result of all this is a civil matter. And what I mean by that is individuals that can claim in a court of law that they have not been convicted of a crime yet; they've only been accused of one, and as a result of that, there's public shaming, harassment. Perhaps in a small town, perhaps may even lead to that person being fired and not be able to get another job. And as a result of that, there is damage that would need to be recovered through civil means. I'm guessing that that's the direction in which this is going to go. Indeed.
Dr. Del Carmen, so public humiliation can certainly be a powerful deterrent, and I think that's what the police have in mind. But what you're saying is that there are unintended consequences. If I got wild and crazy one night, because when stuff goes up on the Internet, if our police department here put that out, and I'm a public figure, it could cause some ramifications, especially the fact that nothing ever goes away on the Internet.
Well, yeah, on public figures like yourself and myself and others, there's obviously, we couldn't argue that because of the fact that we are public figures. But in the sense of a private citizen that, maybe goes out and does something stupid, shoplifts, something out of a grocery store, and then as a result of that, they would post that person's picture on Facebook. It may lead to consequences as a result of a candy being stolen. And of course I'm exaggerating here, but only to highlight a point that in fact, there are those moments when in fact you can't just apply across the board.
Dr. Del Carmen, we're talking with Dr. Alex Del Carmen. Are there more than one? Are there any specific police departments that are doing this?
I believe there are some police departments that are doing it in Massachusetts, and then there are others across the United States. Here in Texas, we have quite a few that actually are habitually posting on their website information related to the individual that they ended up arresting on DWIs and whatnot. And sometimes some of them actually even link it to local news agencies who, in fact, have the story.
All right. Dr. Del Carmen, where do you think this is going? You think the police will have to pull these down eventually?
I doubt it. I really, really do doubt it. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be some sort of an editing process of the information and the way in which it's portrayed. So legally, the other side couldn't argue or couldn't claim that in fact there's maliciousness on the posting of the information. If we keep it to facts, if we keep it to pictures and narratives that are part of the arrest report or part of the public information spectrum, the information that is there is simply, the agency rather is just facilitating that information instead of actually providing an opinion on the matter.
All right. Dr. Del Carmen, thank you very much, sir. Pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
All right.
Police Facebook pages in which they were shaming suspects. I'm not sure what that means or what it's all about, but Dr. Alex Del Carmen joins us right now, law enforcement specialist and crime prevention analyst. And Dr. Del Carmen, what's that all about?
Good morning. Thanks for having me this morning. Well, essentially what we're seeing is a trend of police departments throughout the United States posting notices or sometimes pictures of individuals that they end up arresting. And I think, it's a sort of a twofold component. Some police departments do it to simply warn citizens not to engage in that behavior, while other police departments perhaps may have, the motive of, showing the individual in the hopes that, there's some degree of public shaming to that person and that they themselves will never recommit that act again. So the controversy lies in the fact of whether police departments should in fact do that or not.
Well, it seems to me if it'd stop them, then do it.
If it works, why not?
Right. So, I think if it works, why not, right? But then there's the other component where sometimes you may have people that these are first-time offenses. They're not necessarily serious. They're not necessarily, offenses that, they're going to receive a capital sentence for. And at the end of the day, some people claim that if in fact, they're showing their mugshot all over the place and all over social media, they'll never be able to get a job again and therefore not have a chance to rehabilitate. So the controversy lies in that, it's legal, but whether or not police departments should in fact do that.
You said it was legal. Could it eventually lead to legal issues down the road, or could laws be created to stop this type of activity?
There's always that possibility, but I think it's going to be hard considering that most of those police matters are public record. I think the question will center around the fact of whether or not police departments are going to be subject to lawsuits as a result of that individual not being able to get a job.
Well, that'll be interesting to see if that occurs. Do you have a website?
So they can go to my website to get more information at www.tarleton, tarleton.edu/criminology.
All right. Well, we appreciate your joining us on AM Tampa Bay this morning.
Thank you, Doctor.
Now, something that I always will err on the side of with regard to, there being deference are police. One of the things that I keep up with, the overall number of officers that have fallen in the line of duty, because we so often don't hear about situations with police unless they are sensational and fit a media narrative. But, for example, we've lost 70 police officers in the line of duty so far in 2017 in this country, and that's after having lost 140 last year. And so where you have police that say, hey, we have some tools that can be valuable to us, I'm inclined to pay deference to them in these situations. And one of them increasingly has been the use of social media. However, that is not viewed favorably by all. And so some are now becoming critical of what some will call police Facebook shaming of suspects, humiliation that can ensue from police putting up information on social media. And so to join us and engage in the conversation, law enforcement specialist and the head of the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University, Dr. Alex Del Carmen. Dr. Carmen, thank you very much for taking the time with us. And, many of our police will say, hey, social media is a valuable tool. What are your thoughts, and what do you think about the debate that some are saying that Facebook shaming is a problem in today's society?
Yeah, so good morning, and thanks for having me. I think that social media is an incredible tool for law enforcement, and we have used it in many different ways to, identify suspects, be able to apprehend people, and sometimes even in effective communications with the public. I think the issue at hand is not whether or not it's legal for police departments to post a mugshot of someone on social media. I think the issue is whether or not there should be some sort of an adjective or narrative that accompanies those mugshots that perhaps may ridicule someone, especially in a small town setting where the person hasn't been convicted of a crime yet. and at times that person may suffer from not being able to be employed elsewhere, et cetera.
You bring up an interesting conversation, which is the difference between someone that hasn't been convicted of a crime versus those that potentially have been. Is there a fine line in which maybe law enforcement should be, considerate of just putting up information on Facebook prior to people having had their day in court?
Absolutely. And so if you look at the U.S. Constitution, right, even people that have committed serious crimes versus including those that are, have done minor crimes, I mean, regardless of the severity of the crime, everyone is afforded in the United States, the protections of the U.S. Constitution. And so law enforcement has an ethical and, quite frankly, a legal responsibility to make sure that it is used in a responsible manner. I have no objections to the idea of law enforcement using social media in a useful way. And I don't even oppose the idea that they disclose public information, such as someone's arrest or someone's mugshot, if it's going to serve a greater purpose. But the issue, I think, at hand is when in those rare instances where some police officer decides to post something and then include a narrative attached to that leads that person to have further, perhaps undue harm beyond the scope of what the law requires.
Do you believe that, in general, media is too quick to try to find exception with police activity, drawing negative attention to police efforts to crack down on crimes in our society?
Absolutely. I think that social media has become, and media in general, they have become very accusatory of law enforcement. Look, I live in the Dallas area, and I actually grew up in Miami, and I can tell you the contrast of Miami and Dallas. One thing that unifies police departments across the United States is the fact that the media is quick to jump the gun and accuse a police officer, perhaps even ruin his or her career for the sake of a 5-second video that lacks substance and perhaps in some ways context as well.
I want to switch gears just for a moment, if I might. I know that you were joining us just to talk about the social media situation with police, but also given your level of expertise, I was curious to get your thoughts. We've heard some reports about the smuggling case, the human trafficking or smuggling case, that there is some debate about whether this was human smuggling or human trafficking situation with the truck and the victims that were found in Texas yesterday. Do you have any insight as to the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking and what this looks like to you?
Right, so the smuggling aspect of it would be to actually smuggle someone into the country for purposes of labor, whereas the trafficking would imply that that person is going to be used for a greater financial purpose, right? So regardless of those two types of crimes, at the end of the day, you've got innocent people that are being sacrificed, for the sake of money. Bottom line is we have a problem in the United States. We have to face it, and I don't think the resources have been given to law enforcement that are sufficient both at the federal and state level for them to be able to do a better job in identifying these criminals crossing the border.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us, your expertise and the information. I really do appreciate it. That is Dr. Alex Del Carmen. He's a law enforcement specialist, and again, he heads up the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University.
A driver mows down 6 mailboxes, slurs her words, tells police she has a lizard in her bra, and she does. Throw in a wisecracking cop, and what do you get? A flippant post on Facebook, along with photos of the woman and, of course, the lizard. But not everyone is amused. Dr. Alex Del Carmen is the head of the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth. And Dr. Del Carmen, is it ethical to post an arrest if the suspect has not been before a judge or convicted?
Good morning, and thanks for having me. It actually depends on who you ask. While some people actually argue that this is going to deter other people from committing crimes or doing something similar, there are those civil rights advocates that are simply raising the flag, indicating that these types of actions on behalf of police departments actually lead to public shaming and has consequences that, individuals are not able to get jobs. They're not able to live their lives the way they used to before the incident.
What is the legal difference between posting, let's say, a mugshot, which we've seen police, post with an arrest in a news story, et cetera, and posting a video?
Well, there's not really much of a difference per se. Most of the information that law enforcement, does post on Facebook or Twitter or any of their social media outlets, it's actually subject to public inquiry. So it is public information. I think the bigger question at this point is it ethical? Is it ethical that police departments do this in spite of the fact that the individual that is, whose mugshot appears on Facebook or Twitter may not have been convicted of a crime at that point? I mean, these people are technically innocent until such time that they actually face trial.
Now, is suspect shaming, is this really a big deal? Is this something that's been going on for a while, or are we being too sensitive?
It's been going on for centuries, and historians tell us actually that the last public execution in England was actually written by the fact that so many people were shoplifting. Where the kicker or the line here is that pickpocketing at the time was actually subject to capital punishment. So in other words, some people argue it doesn't work, and it depends on who you ask. But we criminologists, the jury, we say that the jury's still out when it comes to public shaming and the effects of public shaming on deterring crime.
Well, it's interesting because, a lot of people will film an arrest. They're not police officers. They'll put it up on their Facebook page. And I'm trying to think if there's a legal way that they can be stopped, and I can't really think of one.
Right. So every state is different. I live in Texas, and in Texas we have what's called one-party consent, which actually allows you to record, or whether that's audio or video, up to your discretion, without the permission or the approval of the person that you are recording. And I know that there are many other states in the U.S. that do allow you to do that as well.
Now, if a police department did arrest you for, I don't know, I'm assuming that the woman who was arrested with the lizard in her bra may have been under the influence of something. So going with that assumption, if they do post that and there are repercussions, let's say afterward, that she can't get a job, she can't support herself, she can't feed her kids, is this something that we could see a civil lawsuit filed over?
Absolutely. And I think that's the direction that we're headed in many of these instances. The police departments have to be careful in that they actually report the facts. In other words, they don't report any kind of narrative, or, they have a patrol officer that sits behind a desk somewhere and starts posting, look at this lady do these ridiculous things, and characterizes the event. When that happens, then police departments at that point raise their liability component because of the fact that at that point they're adding comments to a fact that really was not necessary and can lead to harm on the individual that files the lawsuit.
Do police departments need to come up with social media standards sooner rather than later?
Oftentimes they do. If you look at California, New York, Florida, Texas, many police departments, particularly the large police departments, they have what's called a social media policy that allows them to not only be governed by it in terms of what officers can and cannot do, but also what their departments can do in terms of posting events or video or mugshots.
All right, that is Dr. Alex Del Carmen. He is the head of the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University in lovely Fort Worth, Texas, which I absolutely do love. Thank you, Dr. Del Carmen. It's good to talk to you.